Hi, this is William Vanderbloemen with the Vanderbloemen Search Group. Today we've got an interview with Dave Ramsey from the Lampo Group. You know, we work with churches of all different shapes and sizes. We help folks find their key staff, and we work all across the country, internationally, different denominations. One of the very few things our clients have in common is that the majority of them use or endorse some form of Dave Ramsey's products. His group has such a great kingdom heart, and they're doing such good things for people. So today we're going to sit down with Dave and talk about a new initiative they have called The Great Recovery. Sit back and watch the interview. I think it'll help you, and I hope it'll encourage you to tune in on July 21st. Thanks for watching. Well, hey there, everybody. Glad to have you here today, tuning in to visit with our friend Dave Ramsey. Dave's done a ton of good for the world, teaching what God says about money, and has really helped people for many, many years. Really, my mind came on the scene in 2008 in a big way when the economy went into the toilet. Dave, thanks for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about how you're seeing things out there just in general in the economy and the way people are either coming together, or are they looking down, or are they looking up? Give us a word.
Well, thanks, William. I appreciate you having me today. This is an important time in our nation, an important time in our economy. And I enjoyed getting to meet you and your wife, spend some time with you at one of our events in Orlando, and have dinner with you guys. It's good to have friends like you. And so thanks for turning us on to your folks here on Skype. We appreciate that. As far as how things are going out there, it's very interesting. It almost depends on who you ask. If you turn off your television, which is probably a really good idea, and you actually start talking to human beings, it's like every other person. One person is booming and having the best year of his life or her life, and things are out of control, and they just sold their house in record time for a price they never thought they could get. Sounds like real estate was booming almost, and it's not. And then another person you talk to, they say, well, gosh, I'm foreclosed, I'm bankrupt, I've been laid off, my brother's laid off, this economy is horrible, and there's this huge polarization or huge dichotomy out there between not the haves and the have-nots, but the way people are viewing it. People are viewing it either positively or negatively. Another example is I buy a lot of real estate personally as an investment, and I feel like I'm at Kmart and the blue light's on. It's a great time to buy real estate. And so, there is a different viewpoint. I've got two friends that are builders that I talked to this week that are both on the verge of bankruptcy. They had a bunch of spec houses, and they're really in the toilet. They're not doing well at all. I talked to another friend of mine this morning who's a builder, and he's building like 7 houses right now, all custom, coming out of the ground. So, what's the difference here, and what is happening in people's minds that is causing this polarization, not between haves and have-nots, but between the I believe I can and I believe I can't.
Sure.
What is this sense of faith that has crumbled for some people, and this sense of faith in their own destiny and the economy and maybe even in God? How has that affected their actions and their sowing and reaping? It's a very interesting time.
So what do you see as the solution, Dave? I know we've got an event we're going to talk about, the Great Recovery. This pretty new idea for you guys, and an event that's going to happen. I think it's a week from Thursday, 7 p.m. Central. It's a free online event. Is that right? I mean, fill us in a little bit on how this all got going and just what you see happening.
Well, it is. And like a lot of things around our organization, this thing kind of developed and started taking on more steam. And the more steam it took, the more we realized this is a God thing. We better get all over this. Because sometimes you start something and you think it's a really good idea in a Christian organization. We do that all the time. And we think, oh, that was God, that was God. And you find out later it was last night's pizza. It wasn't the Holy Spirit, And so we've done some stuff like that, but this is one of those that we can tell God's all over it. We can see the results. We can see the fruit already. And the idea is very simple. We have figured out years ago in the Dave Ramsey organization, and we're probably known more for this than anyone in the nation or maybe the world right now, that if you handle money God's ways, it works. If you handle your marriage God's ways, it works. It's not always the pleasant at the moment. It usually means sacrifice. It usually means giving up some of my rights. If you handle relationships God's ways, it works. If you handle your kids God's ways, it works. It's not perfect because we're not perfect in our implementation. But if we can find out what Scripture says about a given area of our life and study that and get the spirit of it and the nuance of it and begin to apply those things over time, you create prosperity in that segment of your life. And that's true with wealth building as well. And so, 20-something years ago, we went broke and had to learn the hard way because I'm stupid how to handle money. And I started handling money God's ways at that point. I was a baby Christian, and I was introduced to Larry Burkett and Ron Blue and other people that were teaching God's ways of handling money back in those days. And I started doing it myself, and I went, wow, this worked. I started teaching it at the church. It worked. And so for years, we've been teaching in a mainstream setting, a secular setting, if you will, and in the church, the idea of, being out of debt, being on a budget, living on less than you make, saving money. These are all biblical principles that you can back up scripturally as you go through. And when people implement them, it changes their lives. Well, so we've kind of been the guy who says, hey, we help that one. We help that one. We help that one. We help that one. And then in the process of doing that, we've helped millions of that ones and have become a bit of a media personality in the process with the radio show and the Fox appearances and the Good Morning America appearances and all that kind of stuff. And so it kind of put us in a platform position that about 2 years ago, when everything was really bad, we did a thing called Town Hall for Hope. And we thought we'd have 600 churches watch it, and we opened that up to the public. And we ended up with 6,000 churches downlinking it, and a little over 1 million people in attendance. Fox Business aired it. It was aired over our network on our radio stations as well, and it just took off. And the idea was that it was really at the bottom, if you will, of the economic downturn, that people needed hope, and they needed to quit believing in some kind of governmental fix. Well, fast forward now to 2 years plus later. And I'm watching the news, and I'm on Fox. I'll be on with Neil Cavuto this afternoon. I'll be on in the morning with Fox and Friends, and I'm hanging out with these guys. So I'm watching what they're doing, and it's like every time we go to book a segment with them, I love them to death, but it's all negative. It's all this drumbeat of the foreclosures are up, the drumbeat of the bankruptcies are up, the drumbeat of unemployment went from 9 to 9.1. Well, what does that really mean? But it's bad. Whatever it is, it's bad. The drumbeat. They can't balance the budget in Washington, which they should. The drumbeat. But it's never anything like we're going to make it, folks. There's never any of that. And what's happened is, as we started calling on and continue to call on churches teaching Financial Peace University, some of those pastors and some of those church leaders are feeling beat up by the economy and by people's perception of the economy, and more than anything, by the media's perception of the economy. And I'm not mad at the media, and this is not a thing where I'm trying to take them apart or something, but we've just got to watch what we feed into our brains. And as people of faith, we've got to have faith. We've got to have hope. And so we started talking about what would it look like if the churches all be bold and step into this problem rather than be pushed back from the edge by this problem. And a lot of churches do that. A lot of churches do a great job. And sometimes as a leader, I know I need someone to bolster me as a leader, someone to speak life into me. And so that's what we're going to do. This is called the Great Recovery. And we're going to try to group as many of the churches and church leaders in America together as we can. And at one time, try to help as many of their congregation members as we can get their personal finances straightened out. As they do that, the natural result is the church's finances will be straightened out. And as they do that, here's the key: a whole lot of people meet Jesus in that process. Because there's a lot of people can come to the church for answers where they don't get answers in the mainstream. Because the mainstream is all telling them how bad it is, and you might as well just shoot yourself. It's over. They've given up, and they're handing out hats. It's Chicken Little. The sky's falling. Here's your helmet, and we in the church need to be the opposite of that. We need to be the antithesis of that. And I think while I say real estate is on sale and it's a great buy, I think in the same sense this economic problem has created a spiritual void, a vacuum, that we as the church can step into and move the needle in a way that is not just psychological, not just mathematical, but most importantly is spiritual. So we're going to talk about how to do that with a thing called the Great Recovery, and I'm going to talk to leaders. We've got about 5,000 churches signed up at this moment at thegreatrecovery.com, and I'm going to talk to them for about 45 minutes next Thursday night, July the 21st at 7 p.m. Central Time. And it's just for church leaders and Financial Peace University coordinators and pastors and that kind of thing. Anybody can watch. We're not going to keep somebody from watching, but it's not really an event that's designed to entertain the public. This is leader to leader. me as a leader in this segment of our world, talking, okay, here's what the Bible says, here's what the opportunities are in the Spirit, and we're seeing people respond to this unbelievably. We just started it a week and a half ago, got 5,000 downlink locations already. It's unbelievable response.
That's fantastic. It seems like, so much of life, you got to decide whether you're going to be on the problem side of the equation or the solution side, and we've got plenty of people on the problem side in this deal. This hunger for a solution is palpable out there. I was reading the other day a study that said that the closest America came as a church to tithing was during the Great Depression. And then the spiritual awakening that happened shortly after that was huge. And if you go back and look at most of the great spiritual awakenings historically, they happen either on the heels of or during an economic crisis. As you tie that together with the ability we've got to communicate now, and every time there's a communication breakthrough, there's a spiritual breakthrough, and you just see those things line up, and it's time for somebody to step up and step into the plate and hit it out of the park, because I think everything's lined up to be just right. Really appreciate y'all doing this. TheGreatRecovery.com, is that the right website?
That's the website. And William, I think you're really onto something. I mean, think about it. You and I couldn't have done what we're doing right this second 3 years ago.
Right.
We couldn't have done the Great Recovery, this simulcast to these leaders and put it up and me be able to pay for it. It would have cost me $300,000 to do it 4 years ago. And now I can do it for 40 or 50 grand, and I can afford to write that check. And so, we can put this thing together for this Thursday night and step into these pastors' lives. And again, I'm never into church bashing, and I'm definitely not into pastor bashing. There's enough people good at that. I mean, Christian hate mail should be an oxymoron, and it's not. So I'm on the other side. I'm the guy that lifts up. So, what I have realized is, as a leader, sometimes leadership is lonely. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you're kind of by yourself, and unless you intentionally bring some other strong men and women of the faith around you to see things with spiritual eyes and to see things with leadership eyes, with big vision eyes, big scope eyes. Sometimes I need somebody to come in with me and go, hey, Dave, you can do this. And I go, wow, I never thought of that. And so what they did, again, they used the power of the tongue, and they spoke life to me as a leader. And so this is really what I want to do. I think there's a huge opportunity here for the individuals to get their money straightened out. But I'm going to keep doing that for 30 years. We don't need a great recovery for me to do that. I'm going to keep doing that. But what I like to think about here is that if we could really pull this together and create critical mass at a time such as this, what that could do for the church, it literally could create an awakening. It really could. And what you're talking about with the technology lining up, the vacuum that the economic problems have created in the hope area, the faith area, the spiritual area, if you will, there's this hole out there, this longing. And I think the church is in a unique position in America right now to utilize these technologies. And how weird would it be if a money thing, helping people with their money, someday we look back and it was the little spark down under there that created a real revival. And for me, a real revival is not a money thing. A real revival is a bunch of people meeting Jesus and a bunch of people learning to follow him like they never did before, on fire for God in a new way, in a live way. I mean, we could literally from the bottom up impact this economy, and more importantly, impact the nation spiritually. And so that's the big dream with this. And we'll see what God's got going. I don't know. We may just help a bunch of people, and I'll be okay with that. I always look back and I go, well, some of that was Dave and some of that was God. I'm not ever sure. You people that know exactly what God's saying, you scare me to death. So I know that this is a God thing we're doing. I don't know exactly what he's going to do with it yet. And I'm starting to feel around the edges that it could be, it's possible that it could blow up and flower up into something, blossom into something that we look back on and we go, wow, you were doing something cool there, Jesus. That's cool.
Years ago, Dave, I was on a panel. We were examining new church models at a conference, and there was a young guy there presenting his model to do church differently with video venues and broadcasting different campuses. It was Craig Rochelle, who I know is a friend of yours and a friend of mine now. So they turned to me and said, William, you've studied theology. What do you think? And I just said, look, I don't know whether he's got it 100% right or not, but I think we're going to be held accountable for trying, not for getting it 100% right. It's a desperate time. communication breakthrough means a kingdom breakthrough. Economic downturn means a spiritual upturn. So I just applaud you for trying, and we'll just see. I mean, I think God can probably use what we put out there.
Well, that's exactly right. We're going to sow the seed, and some of it will grow, and some of it will fall on rock, and some of it will fall on sand, and some of it will fall in the valley. The good news with this much manure, there's a fertilizer. So we got all kinds of room, you know. There's lots of stuff we can do. So, again, just help us, guys. If you're watching this, you know, it doesn't cost you anything. Come watch this. I'm going to talk to you again in a little more structured way than William and I have been doing here, but probably a little bit of the same kind of a message, basically. But we're going to walk you through some of the actual mechanical steps you can take then to join what we're trying to do. We're literally trying to create a movement going into this fall, because I have realized that God is still on his throne, and that the government, bless their hearts, they're sweet and they're trying, but they're doofuses. They just can't do it. And they cannot fix this. It's not in their power to fix it, and they can't get along enough to get anything done. I don't think they could agree to how to spend a penny up there right now. It's ridiculous. So we the people have got to take care of we the people, and that's the way it's supposed to be anyway. We're dependent on the King of Kings. We're not dependent on the president or the Congress, and we've kind of got to get our people back to that kind of a feel. And this is exciting time. So join us and help us out. If you don't want to do it, it's cool, but it's free to come watch and see what we're doing and see to the level you want to participate. You may think I'm crazy, and lots of people do, and I'll be caught being crazy pretty regularly. It's kind of a hobby of mine. So greatrecovery.com. Check us out. Get signed up for the downlink location. It's for leadership. Again, it's not something you need to broadcast to your whole congregation. If you want to, you can, but it's not really designed for them. They're going to be going, what am I doing here? So it's for the pastors, the leaders, the deacons, the elders, Financial Peace University coordinators, or future Financial Peace University coordinators. Somebody believes in this idea and wants to take a leadership role. Any of those kinds of things, you guys sign up, come watch the thing. We got about 20,000 people aside from the 5,000 locations. And I don't know how many will be at the 5,000 locations. So that's already, and we got another week to sign up. I'm guessing we're going to break at this pace, and with your help today, we'll probably break 10,000.
That's great. That's great. Well, thanks for all you're doing. For those of you who don't know, Dave does a lot more than just a radio show. We've got all 7 of our kids are going through financial peace in various life stage courses. So they've all got their envelopes out and they're learning from day one. If you've got kids, you need to find those materials. Particularly if you're a church planter and you're trying to figure out what the right steps are, you really need to look into Entree Leadership. There's a book coming out. There's also some seminars you can take, short ones and long ones. Adrian and I went and did the long one this year and really just learned a ton. I think a church planter could learn a ton by going and learning God's business principles. And there's a lot there at DaveRamsey.com that you're not going to want to miss. Hey, Dave, thanks for the time. I can't let you get away without asking you one question for some of our people that are watching right now. We've got a ton of people that call me and say, is it safe to start hiring again? How in the world do I answer that question when they tell me that?
Well, I love that question. You know, it's never safe to hire. Hiring is one of the scariest things those of us that lead do, because those of us that lead, we know as leaders we're servants. And we're serving those people. We're binding ourselves to serve those people that we hire. They're not units of production. They're people. And they're people that Jesus loves, and they've got families, and they've got kids, and they've got dogs, and they've got dreams, and they've got nightmares, and those are people you're bringing on board. So I've got 310 folks working here, and it's not safe to hire, but it's always safe to hire, because at the end of the day, really, while I take that responsibility as a leader very seriously, and I'm going to watch the economics of my organization, and I'm not going to bring somebody on hoping I can meet payroll. We're always going to be ready to meet payroll. We got to be ready with the money. We can't, well, I've got faith. No, that's stupid. That's not faith. You got to be wise in how you lay out your pro formas and your budgeting, and don't build a tower without first counting the cost, lest you get halfway up and you're unable to finish, and all who see you begin to mock you and say, there's another guy that began to build and was unable to finish. You want to have a budget. You want to have a game plan. You want to have the money laid out so we can take care of it. But having said all of that, at the end of the day, your ministry is not yours. My ministry is not mine. I run it for somebody else. I run it for God. It's His. And so if the Spirit is prompting me, and I've been wise and I've looked at the numbers, I'm not going to allow the negative voices in the community to keep me from hiring. We had 6 new people start Monday. We have 40-something positions on the board right now to hire. This organization possibly could be approaching 400 people by the end of the year, and we're at 310 right now. So, is it safe to hire? It's one of the best times to hire because there's so much high-quality talent on the street or that's scared that they're getting ready to be on the street and will make a move. I've brought in some of the best, godly, brilliant young people in the past 12 months that I probably couldn't have gotten in a boom time. And so it's a great time to hire in that sense, but I've got to be wise. And I've got to have that healthy dose of not fear, but of respect for the economic conditions. And, everyone we're hiring and bringing in are revenue justified. And if they don't, then it's not going to work out for them. And they're told that on the front end. So, we're doing all that all the way through. So, yes, hire to the extent that it's wise in your setting. Don't let the drumbeat of negativity influence what God's got for you to do. And if He's got something for you to do and everything's looking good, turn off your television or throw a brick through it and start hiring.
That's good. That's good. Dave, thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it. Go to daveramsey.com, greatrecovery.com. I promise you it'll be a good investment of your time. Thank you all for tuning in and watching today.